Hi everybody, jacobcdefgh here, and today I'll be showing you how I make mind maps for studying in Asia's #1 university. So let's get into it.
I'm a rich scholar, got the city shook. I make top dollar like a white collar crook. Keep a white collar, black forces on my foot, and I stick with my brothers like the pages of a.
So before we dive deeper into the mind maps themselves, I just want to give some context as to how I use mind maps in my studying methods. So for me, I split my studying into two phases. The first is content consumption, and then the second is memory retrieval. So that's actually the same as what Daniel Tomago talked about in one of his studying videos. And this mind maps is for the content consumption phase. So content consumption just means that you're looking through your lecture slides and you're trying to digest all the information that the lecturers have talked about. Then memory retrieval is when you actually try to put this into practice. So for example, you do practice papers, you do some active recall, maybe you do your flashcards and whatnot. So for me, mind maps fall into the first phase of my studying methods, where I try to consume all the content and just try to find my way and figure my way around it. So that's just some context as to how I use mind maps to revise. Ideally, this would be an iterative process, so you'll be adding on to your mind map every day. But what happens is that most of the time I end up doing it during recess week or reading week, and yeah, that's not the ideal thing that you should be doing. So yeah, let's just dive into this mind maps for good now. So first things first, where do I actually make my mind maps? I like to use Proess, which is actually a Chinese app on the App Store, which is really good. I don't know if they have an Android equivalent. So what I like about this app is that the canvas is actually pretty unlimited. It's pretty much unlimited. So as you can see, if I zoom out of this mind map that I made and just swipe, I'll never really reach the end. And yeah, I find it pretty amazing. I don't know if other apps like GoodNotes or Notability have this feature, but I think this is really good. So this is not sponsored at all. I've been using it for about 1 year plus. They do have a free version, but you're limited to 6 canvases. But I just bought the free version. It's 10 Singapore dollars, so that's about the fifth of the price of GoodNotes. I think it's a really good investment. So moving on to how I actually make the mind maps. Well, I don't think that my process is very optimal, but I guess I'll just share it with you anyway. As I'm reading the slides, I'll just try to translate that information into the mind map in a way that sort of makes sense to me. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing it, and you can choose the level of detail you want. So you can either have a really high level conceptual mind map, or you can have one that has all the details. I prefer the latter because mind maps are my only form of notes, and ideally this entire mind map should be how the information is stored in my brain as an entire network of data and information and weird facts that I hope won't come out in the exam. So I'll probably just put a few screenshots so you can see what I'm talking about. But there's really no fixed format as to how to make a good mind map. It's just whatever comes to you naturally, because that's how your brain understands information the most naturally. And just one more thing that I want to highlight. I guess a lot of people think that the words that you write in your notes are the most important thing. I would sort of disagree with that. I think the beauty of mind maps is that it's very non-linear, so you can rearrange things however you want. And I would say that the most important thing in mind maps are actually the connections you draw between concepts, because that's something that other forms of note-taking don't actually provide. So as you can see in my mind map, I've drawn some lines that actually span like 50% of the page, just linking concepts from one topic to another. And I think that's really helpful in my learning because it really ties everything together. But yeah, generally mind maps are a really great way to study, I think. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. There's nothing fancy or anything. So I would say that making notes and mind maps is generally a really great way to learn about concepts and the things that your prof talks about in school. But if you want to really study and score well in the exam, you definitely have to pair this with something else, like doing practice papers or other kinds of active recall or memory retrieval. So yeah, mind maps good, and cheers! See ya! Is this clickbait enough?